I lent my best friend my credit card for an emergency. She used it to fund her secret lifestyle. I've always prided myself on being the kind of person my friends can rely on. When life happens, whether it's a small favor or something big, I'm usually the first to step up. So when my best friend Laura called me one night in a panic, I didn't think twice about helping her out. Laura and I had known each other since college. She was the wild one back then, always up for a night out, the life of every party, but also one of the kindest people I knew. She was a bit of a dreamer, always moving from one idea to the next, but I never held it against her. While I settled into my career and a more predictable routine, she stayed on a more chaotic path. Freelance work, side gigs, the occasional short-lived relationship, Laura's life was constantly in motion. Still, we remained close, and when she called me late one evening a few years ago, I wasn't surprised to hear that she was in a bit of a bind. She told me she had lost her job again and was struggling to make ends meet. Rent was due and she didn't have enough to cover it. She sounded embarrassed, even apologetic. I knew she wasn't the best with money, but she'd always managed to bounce back before. I was hesitant, but she asked if she could borrow my credit card just for a month or two until she found something new. She promised she'd only use it for essentials, groceries, bills, and maybe a little help with rent. I agreed, knowing it was a risk, but trusting that she'd pay me back once she was back on her feet. After all, this was Laura, my best friend, the person who would do anything for me. For the first couple of months, things seemed fine. I saw a few small charges here and there, nothing alarming. But slowly, the amounts started to add up. There were charges at clothing stores, restaurants, and even a few spa services. I rationalized it at first, thinking maybe she just needed a little bit of comfort while she was going through a tough time. I didn't want to accuse her of misusing my card without being sure. But then, things took a turn. One day, I received a call from my bank about a series of large charges on my card, several $1,000s in purchases. My heart sank. I knew Laura couldn't have possibly needed that much for essentials. The charges were from places I knew she frequented, expensive boutiques and high-end restaurants. I had a sinking feeling that she had been using my card to fund more than just her basic needs. I called her right away, trying to keep calm. When she answered, I asked her if she had any idea what was going on with my card. She paused for a moment, and then her tone shifted. She admitted that things had gotten a bit out of hand. She had started using my card more often than she intended, but she promised to pay it all back. She told me she was just going through a rough patch, that she didn't want to worry me, and that she was close to landing a new job. I wanted to believe her, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The amounts on the card were more than just a bit out of hand. I asked her for the total, and when she told me, my stomach flipped. She had racked up almost $10,000 in charges. I couldn't believe it. How had I let things get this far without noticing? I told her she needed to pay me back immediately, or I would have no choice but to report the charges. She begged me not to, saying that her situation would get worse if the credit card company got involved. Against my better judgment, I gave her more time. Weeks went by with no payments, just more excuses. Finally, I had enough. I reported the charges to my bank as fraudulent, and the whole thing spiraled from there. Laura was furious with me, saying I had ruined our friendship over a little money. But this wasn't just a little money. It was my savings, my credit score, and my trust in her. She stopped taking my calls, and before I knew it, she had disappeared from my life completely. For months I was left picking up the pieces. The bank eventually reversed most of the charges, but my credit score took a hit, and I had to deal with the fallout for a long time. It wasn't just the financial damage, though. That was the easy part. What hurt more was realizing that someone I had considered my best friend had been taking advantage of me for months. I kept replaying all the times I had trusted her, wondering if there were other things she hadn't told me. I haven't heard from Laura since. Some mutual friends said she moved to a new city, started over. I'm not sure if I'll ever see her again, and part of me doesn't want to. That betrayal is something I'll never forget. It changed the way I view friendships, trust, and what it means to really help someone. I thought I was being a good friend, but in the end, I was just being used. This is a story of how trust can be easily broken. Have you ever experienced something similar? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and be careful who you trust.